being a child born in the middle 70s and being a child of the 80s growing up in that time, it was a weird experience that right now, the incidents and things that are happening right now are coming to come back to me in an odd way of thinking. So back in the 80s, while I grew up on mostly in military bases from most of the time in the 80s into the early 90s, it was a interesting time because while living in a literal melting pot of personalities and racial identities, there was a whole lot of misogyny and racism and just downright just nastiness going back and forth. It was just not expected. You wouldn't seen it. You didn't understand it or see it in the way the world was at the time and then what we were going through as we were developing at the time. Case in point, I own no less than joke books on Polish people. 6 Polish joke books while I was in the 6th and 7th grade. I knew no one who was a Polish person, but everybody told Polak jokes because they were the rage back in middle school. It just was what it was. Of course, rolling out of that, going into high school, everything that was weird, odd, or just sort of seemed like it was dumb was gay. The tag was, oh, that's gay, that's gay, that's gay, on all sorts of things. And we weren't even talking about things that were actually gay, but the tag to make it a defamatory remark was on everything going forward and didn't really help people in the ways where people were coming out, no pun intended, in new ways for homosexuality and people in those ways. As far as I could tell, I knew no one in high school that was homosexual, but we used the word gay a lot and it wasn't in a good way. Ironically, after my time in my teens, going into my early 20s, after a very bad breakup in college, for many, many years, anyone who was female was just some dumb chick, no matter how dumb they were or how smart they were or how accomplished they were or who they actually were in respect to who I was. They were just kind of, they had like no class, no sort of standing whatsoever. Everybody just didn't matter. And what snapped me out of that, oddly enough, was 9/11 and just sort of getting back onto track and being forward and going forward and moving on. By that time, I was in my middle 20s, so it took a long time to get out of that sort of trick for that thought process. So what does all that have to do with today, right now, this randomish raw recording on the 29th of March, 2025? And I have no notes. I have some ideas going forward. I have no notes in this stuff. But I fairly recently had a video about Donald Trump and saying that how Donald Trump and a very bad joke that Obama said at a White House Correspondents' Dinner triggered the run for the presidency and the run for who he is right now because he can't take a joke and has to take it to the extreme to show everybody he's right. And while this isn't that point exactly, it is what we're dealing with right now for the complete whitewashing of history as it is. Donald Trump has gotten onto a trope that DEI is what's killing America. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Everything done to do diversity, equity, and inclusion is bad, so it must go away. This is not making a quota to make people equal is bad, so because it's getting people out of jobs, or it means somebody doesn't get a job, so we're going to get rid of that. This is anything that talks about how we were not so great in the past is bad, so we need to get rid of it. Now, from a job standpoint, if one person takes a job, that means someone else doesn't get it. So if in that standpoint, that very bad analogy, if there's 2 white people going for a job and one person gets it, the other one doesn't get it, and it's just supposedly seen as, well, that guy was better. That guy was, had more talent, you kind of shrug it off. But if what happens is there's a white guy and a black guy for a job and the black guy gets a job, then you think, oh, he got it because he was black. That's the sort of underlying thing that Donald Trump is pushing, that DEI is pushing for people who do not have the same qualifications, who are inferior in the actual workforce, get jobs that other people don't get, not based on actual merit, based on actually going forward. Now, also what's getting wrapped into this stuff is basically anything that makes us, U.S., feel bad about us, U.S., even if we did bad things to us, U.S., in the past. While we've not quite erased the Civil War as a war that ended up freeing the slaves, there are various ways and various mentions. I'm doing some history on that one, on how it got started. And the word slavery was very frequently omitted from documentation, not used very much because it was seen as states' rights, although the state's rights to keep slaves. Um, Many other things are being literally plucked from history. Literally plucked from history. Donald Trump wrote an executive order, day one or day two of his presidency this year, coming in January after his inauguration. Now, essentially wiped DEI programs from across the map of the government, and of course, pushing for other companies, private companies, to wipe their DEI standards, DEI programs. And many have capitulated. Many have jumped onto that board bandwagon and just pulled things off the shelf and said, we're not going to celebrate these things. Donald Trump had a Black History program in which he invited Tiger Woods, who we now know is dating one of his granddaughters. There you go. But the Pentagon could not do a Black History program. In fact, Pentagon actually pulled information from the Tuskegee Airmen, men who actually helped win a war back in the day, because diversity. They also pulled stuff on women who supported the men in that same war, World War II, because of diversity. They were hired because they were white women, or they were women, so that's how the WASP came about. The Tuskegee Airmen were hired specifically to be black fighter pilots, so that's a diversity hire. They were wiped away. Airmen got put back into the curriculum. The WASPs are slowly being back put in, and then things got even worse. They pulled pictures of the Enola Gay off of the websites, off of the history books, because the plane was named Gay. Gay was the maiden name of one of the pilots of the plane, and the plane dropped a bomb on Tokyo, a nuclear bomb, that atomic bomb that helped in the war. That's history. But the name of the plane was not celebrating homosexuality. It was just a very popular last name. In fact, Gay is still a fairly common last name around these parts. The euphemism used for it, as in happy versus homosexual, that has changed a bit. But it doesn't change the fact that it was named after a person, not after a feeling, if you will. Jackie Robinson's page off MLB and in the military books got pulled off because it was a bit controversial. Jackie Robinson was an Air Force lieutenant who was an Army lieutenant who was going to go to World War II and fight, but was court-martialed for sitting in the front of a bus and talking to a white woman who happened to be the wife of a fellow officer who knew each other very well. So these stories, these things, and sort of backgrounds that show where we were, to hopefully show, while we've gotten better, where we're going forward, are being snatched. Next thing you know, we're going to take away Jackie Robinson's, breaking home run records, breaking records, because he was brought in to integrate baseball. He was in a league of all black people, and one of the first people to come into the world of the full major leagues, white baseball, and play just as well, if not better, than everybody else. He's a DEI hire. And so none of his records matter. The recent thing that's really got my ire up is with the Smithsonian Institute, with the museums. Donald Trump has taken over the Kennedy Center and wants to bring in stuff that shows that basically reflect our values, whatever the hell that means. So whatever. He took it over. He literally fired everybody who was on the board, put himself in charge of something that he doesn't have time to do because he's running the nations. And he decided to put a bunch of flackies and folks that would be capitulate to him on the board to put things on there. With that, many folks who would think are diverse but have very popular programs, Shonda Rhimes and Lin-Manuel Miranda, have dropped their programs. Hamilton, that thing about history, which has Puerto Ricans and black folks rapping about being an American religion, even though they weren't really Puerto Rican or black, that's been pulled from the stage from that one. That's a very popular show because it actually tells history, dramatized, of course, and in a way that people have actually got into it. More people actually know what Alexander Hamilton did other than get shot by Aaron Burr because of that play. Now, the Smithsonian Institute has been given the task, or J.D. Vance, the vice president, given the task to basically clear the DEI from the museums and from all national monuments. Anything that's not in the way of essentially showing a positive light in America, anything that's sort of putting a bit disparaging light of America, is going to be wiped away if it can be done. Now, how can it be done? I'm not quite sure, because here's a trope that you have to remember. History is written by the winners. The people who win the battles, people who win the court cases, people who win the wars, get a chance to write history, or more specifically, put in history what things will be going forward. Roe versus Wade is a popular opinion because when it was put into place, it made abortion legal for the nation. And history wrote that as something that was there. Now, there were people who fought against it, and now that it's been repealed and abortion is not a legal right across the nation, history is writing that as this is what's going on. You can see in dry legal terms of how we make our laws and how we put things in there. And then you interpret how the people actually work through things. John Payne, per the Constitution, per an amendment to the Constitution to make things work out because of, actual rights and actual representation, by the founding fathers' ideas or the writers of the people who wrote the Constitution, it's only 3/5 of a person for counting people. It has no rights whatsoever. If we went by the traditional reading of the Constitution and, wiped away the 14th Amendment, I can't vote. I'm 3/4 person, 3/5 a person. Somebody needs to own me because I can't really manage myself. It goes back to things like that. Going backwards, erasing things that happened. When something goes on the books, whether it's for good or for ill, it's on the books. You evaluate it, you live by it until you figure out that it's not really good and you fix it, or you let it go because maybe it is good, or maybe you can't fix it, and you just have to deal with it. It's one of those things that people don't like to talk about. No, people don't like to kind of get into. And you don't have to necessarily talk about it, get into it. But when someone asks the question, someone should be able to go find that answer and understand what's going on. And I should say, think for themselves and figure out what to do with it. But oftentimes it is a sort of indoctrination of our lifestyles, our peoplehood, our tribes, that we put the ideas in people's head and go with that. Now, in 2025, there's no reason to believe that racism is dead. I mean, when Obama was elected and we had a first black president, racism didn't die. In fact, some cases became more prevalent. What was going on when the attacks were out there, the words not said out loud were pretty much flashed in neon signs, but not said out loud because it was going on as things were being battled against, not because this guy was a bad person, this guy had bad policies. You can agree or disagree on that end, but it was because the guy that was running things was not one of us. And oddly enough, he is one of me, but not one of the us that's been in charge all this time. And so instead of going with the guy who's trying to do things the right way and doing things that are better, different, more, it's just, we're going to go against him because he exists. That happened. If we do all we can to erase the we is a big US, not I, because this doesn't make any sense to me. Do all we can to eliminate the past as a way to see as jumping points to where we got to here, and just assume that, we've always been here, or even worse, something a few steps forward, that thing that made us get to here was a little better, we have problems. We have progression. Things has gone on. Things have changed. Life has moved on. Time has moved on. There is no way that you can say that we, the states, are any sort of equivalent in the way things work as it was back when I was a teen in the 80s and 90s. It just wasn't that way. It's not. You can't say the same thing for going back another 30 odd years for that generation there as well, as they were preparing for, at that point, getting out of the big World War ages and getting to what would be a civil rights sort of movement and a new era here. And they go back 30 years back from then, when, trust me, beyond the fact that there was no such thing as air conditioning, life would have been kind of sucky for a guy like me. I'm kind of a soft god, if you will, and I don't think I would have loved living in the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s. I'm pretty sure I would not have liked that. So while I don't expect this to get massive amounts of views, of looks, or even in any and well, I do get too many comments that are going to go in the way that is a conversation, which is sort of the point of what I do on these things online. I do want to know, I do want to make sure it's known that these words have been said. So for the 5, 10 people that actually watch it, just click something and say thank you. I appreciate that. Give me a comment, yay or nay, plus or minus. Do all the hate and vitriol you want to if you're a troll, or say, you know what, that is an interesting take. Here's what I want to say on this one going forward. But we're erasing history. We're erasing diversity in the way in the thought process that everything that is not a strong white person in charge of something means there's lesser of it, and it's not there. If we start taking away, as we see in Florida, if you're deporting many people who are doing low wage jobs, who are just happy to be here, not that they have a right to be here because they are here undocumented and illegally, but you just take those folks away, just pull them up and disappear them. When you say you're disappearing gang members and murderers and stuff like that, but you're taking away dishwashers and housekeepers, and then you replace them with child labor, younger people who aren't in the same vein as living in the 20s and 30s where they all had to go out and work at 13 years old, and you're not going to get that coming back because they're all on their phones. It's not doing anything better. Making things like they were in the 30s is not making things like being better going into 2030, because technology and time and people and thought processes and hopefully enlightenment has, advanced by 100 years. Crypto didn't exist back in the day. So back in the day, they couldn't, you couldn't trade off something that was a nothing and make money off it. Now you can, and you can gain and lose fortunes in a moment. And so that's something that just doesn't equivalate. The normal person did not have access to all the things that we all have access to. And yes, we are overloaded with debt in the process, but pretty much any person born here in the United States that can get up to 18, 19 and get some level of job can have access to anything they really, really want, provided they can convince some people to give them a little extra money to make it happen for a while. They may not hold it for forever, but it is there. So complaining about DEI hires, complaining about having people who don't have the qualifications to do things, just saying, oh, there's people that are on the government dole that just don't do anything. Yeah, there may be too many life coaches, maybe too many diversity seminars. You may not want to sit through one of those things on time because they may get dull and dumb and stupid. But at the same time, just because the person next to you isn't quite like you doesn't mean you're better than them or they're worse off than you, or vice versa. Because if I went through my life thinking everybody was better than me, when in reality, I show up in rooms and I'm usually the smartest person there, which kind of scares me because the people who think they're the smartest tend to show pretty quickly just how dumb they are. It becomes a problem. So we're going to eliminate full museums. We eliminated full buildings of people who worked at places because, oh, they just weren't doing anything. That job could work for something else. Or, you know what? We're spending money on all these foreign lands and stuff, and we can, use it for something else. So let's just kill those bills. Meanwhile, the people that we as a big brother of the world used to support aren't being supported, aren't getting what they need, and don't get that reason to say the U.S. is our big brother and takes care of us. And when China rolls in and say, oh, we'll take good care of you, as we're seeing in many places that we've already pulled out of before, that we've been contentious with, especially in a lot of African nations which are aligning with Chinese interests right now, you're going to see all those minerals that we say we want to pull from people go to other nations. All that support that we say we need from people to do stuff go to other nations. All that idealism go to other nations who aren't as friendly to us, and of course really want us to be put down and want to prove that the American experiment was a dumb thing in the first place, and everyone should go back to what should work in the past, things closer to fascism or communism, or the best thing going forward, imperialism. Back to kings, back to one leader just ruling over with iron fists, because that's what works for us. That's efficient. One person says do this, we do that. We may look like that here in the U.S. right now. They may have that tinge going on. But right now, even though many people aren't doing the good work to actually keep it working the right way, we're not there yet. So the experiment's still on. Nothing's been done. The Constitution's not been ripped up completely, even if we have a national leader who tends to think he can walk around it and doesn't seem to actually understand what it says and what it's meant to do. and how progressive things are as you get better, and as things get added to that to fix what was not perfect, because they knew it wasn't perfect and knew things would change, unfixing things to make them less perfect again doesn't make it great. So if you're in a non-protected class at this point, you're basically living in the world where you used to be more in power, and now you're not, and it's a little bit scary because you don't have the same pull you have, and you can't just do things you want to. That may be a problem for you, but it's also a general problem from anyone else who does not have the ability, does not have the stepping stones, did not get a pair of boots to pull up from the bootstraps in the first place, and you keep refusing to sell them any boots to upgrade their lives and do more greater things. So apologies for this ramble on this Saturday morning. A lot of things happening in the world. A lot of things are just getting to me. I should have did more work and scripted this out, but these are the raw thought process motions that are going on. Oh yeah, I opened up by saying that, I was pretty much a misogynist, a homophobe, and a racist back in my younger days. And I was. And I got over it. And I learned what the deal was. And I learned what things I said did not make any sense, were extremely hurtful. And even though no one was there to necessarily hear it or was targeted by someone there, when people started dropping N-bombs at me when I became a teenager, it's the same thing. So I'm not whitewashing my past and things that I've said and some things that I've done, because from doing those things, oddly enough, I know how the system works. I know how the process works, and I know what happens to be someone who is making fun of someone who I think of as lesser. Even if in the time and place I didn't understand that's what I was actually doing. But I do now. So I have much love and respect for pretty much anybody, unless you actually disrespect me, and then I do what I can to either overly love on you or cut you off the kneecaps and make you feel exactly what it feels like to be beat down, because I can do that. So think about that next time you want to toss a not quite nice word or comment my way, I guess. But in the meantime, let's think about where we are. I don't think I mentioned names in this, what it is about the current, let's say, administration happening here in the United States. I don't think I mentioned the name, which is pretty obvious. But the process is the things being done. Oh, I did mention names. I talked about Donald Trump and the joke, so I did say his name. But what seemed to be coming off of the idea of one person really isn't. There's a lot more behind the scenes. These aren't just one crazy old grandpa popping off on things and people somehow just sort of, just giving him enough to humor him what is going on. There's a movement up front, a national movement, an insiders movement that's trying to turn things around and make it look like this is who we are, this is who we should be, but not make it look like it's a complete overturn and a complete taking back of everything we've done to progress in the 200 plus years we've had in this nation. Because there are people out there who are afraid of things changing, not and afraid of their legacies being erased for whatever reason. When they're not being erased, they're just having other legacies put next to them, and there's choices to who to actually embrace and choices of who to look at. History is there. Their history is there. Our history is there. Another person's history is there. All history is there. You just can't spend the same amount of time with one history if you're looking at all of them, which is how the whole melting pot thing works. It's not a matter of having one true religion, if you will, one true history of what's going on. It's understanding how we got here and the ugliness that was there to get here, and the reason why we decided to get up and figure out what to fix and go forward going there. History is not kind. History is not neat. History is supposed to be something to put in the past to figure out how to move forward towards the future. A marker from a time past, time long gone, in some cases not so long gone, to say this is the point where we started here and here's where the pivot happened. At this point, certain people decided we needed to change and we changed. Or at this point, certain people thought we should change and we didn't, and we are better, worse, and not indifferent for that. History are the waypoints you go to see where you were in your travels so you can backtrack and see how you got there. If you're afraid of history, your history, other people's history, history of folks that you will never come in contact with, but just is kind of interesting, then your fears are not warranted. Your fears are not good. Your fears are bad, and you trying to fight those fears or battle that fears is making it worse for me. And that's a problem. Makes it worse for all of us. Oddly enough, even for you. And that's a problem. So if the DEI toss-up is a matter of my son of this ethnicity is not getting the opportunities because sons of other ethnicities are getting more opportunities, not the fact that my son does not have the same talent, level of ability, and is not capable, or in fact was going to be nepoed into it, we have problems. Let's try to have less problems. Let's try to have a conversation, a dialogue on this topic. Let's try to talk about this. We're erasing history for what reason? I don't understand what reason. I can't fathom why. There really is no reason to do this. Of all the things that I can complain about Donald Trump doing that make no sense, this is the biggest one that makes no sense because he's attacking something that if he left alone would be one less thing for people to come after him. Unless the point is the old flood the zone with all sorts of things to get people upset about, and then he can literally do something even bigger because they're not paying attention. Problem is, there are people keeping an eye on all these things because they know he's a master of distraction. So they're keeping this on this one thing here. They also know there's a bigger picture. This is leading to something. What's it leading to? What do you think it's leading to? Or am I just a crazy person who's drawing lines to something that doesn't exist? That's possible. Not probable. Let me know what you think about this. We'll do more of these as they come around. This experiment didn't turn out to be as wide as I thought it was going to be, so we're just going to kind of roll with it as we can. But let me know what you think about this one in the comments, in emails. jclevelandpayne@gmail.com, the Conversation Project. The Conversation Inbox at gmail.com, our website. This is conversationproject.com. All the things, all the calls to actions. I got to get up because I got to actually do the news stuff for the day, the work stuff for the day, and we have some activities that must be taken care of. So let me know. You let me know.